life and legacy of Guru Padmasambhava. Yesterday was quite exciting, and I think today also we have some amazing speakers and sessions. And the first session for today is the impact of Guru Sambhava in our time. That's what the topic is about. And we have three speakers and our chairperson. Sudha Gopalakrishnan is the chairperson. Can I ask her to come on to the stage? Then we have Ian Baker. Could you join us? Wangchuk, Dorjee, Negi. Could you join us here? And Lobzang Tsewang. And I will hand over to the chairperson to take us through the rest of the session. Just before we begin, can I just give you this little token? Oh, you got a nice yellow one.
So, a very good morning to all of you. I hope you had a restful night yesterday. Today we are on to a very important topic about the impact of Padmasambhava, Guru Padmasambhava in our time and our age. What does he represent to us? It's a very important topic. Yesterday, while we were talking, the last one was about locally contextualizing the teachings of Guru Padmasambhava, what he means to us in different contexts. And in any way, I think Guru Padmasambhava also transformed the knowledge that he had. He transmitted and transformed the knowledge he had in multiple ways, so that it becomes accessible to all kinds of people across the world. To that extent, what does he mean? What is on offer for us at this time of the time as actually in this present day of globalization and hyper-reality, which actually Dasho Karmaura had asked very pointedly yesterday, what does he, in today's age of globalization, what does he offer to us? What does the teaching of Vajrayana give us? This is the topic of today's discussion. We have three presentations today. Sri Ian Baker, Sri Wangchuk Dorjee Negi, and also Sri Lobzang Tsewang today. We have about 1.5 hours for this session, with about 20 minutes for each presentation, if that's okay with you. And maybe we can take the questions, if there are questions, we can take them together later at the close of all the three presentations. I think perhaps that's a more easier way to deal with questions rather than one by one. Perhaps it might extend more. And we have to finish by 11:30. So first, Ian Baker. He's going to talk about the Guru Padmasambhava and his the secret lands and the sacred geographies, the hidden lands of the lotus-born Padmasambhava's ecological legacy. And he will be talking about the scrolls that are attributed to Padmasambhava in the remote destinations, some destinations called Beul, secret or hidden lands deep in the Himalayas, and which may have inspired the myth of Shangri-La that we know today. So this is what he's going to talk about. He's an explorer, documenter, writer, and he has been honored by the National Geographic Society as one of the 7 explorers of the millennium. And he's also the author of several books on Tibetan and Himalayan cultural history and environment. So over to Mr. Baker.
Thank you. So this will be a challenge to try to keep this 20 minutes, but I'll do my very best. And what I'll be talking about is really a visual introduction to the way that Guru Padmasambhava embedded his teachings in landscape and how those landscapes today function, I would say, as a teachings in themselves for those who visit these places called Beyu, or hidden lands. So I'd like to start out with kind of honoring my two teachers who introduced me to Padmasambhava and to the concept of Bild. Of course, Dorjee on the left and Chatur Rinpoche on the right. Dorjee Rinpoche was born in Tirkung in the hidden land of Pemaka, which is considered, according to Guru Rinpoche's text, the greatest of all the hidden lands. And Chatur Rinpoche had many practice centers, meditation centers in hidden lands, both in Nepal and Bhutan, and was the one who really introduced me to the whole idea and concept and practice of hidden lands. Since this is a session also referring to texts and commentaries of Guru Rinpoche, the texts which describe the hidden lands are called Negi in Tibetan, so describing these sacred places. They were often transcribed by Yeshe Sogyal, Guru Rinpoche's Tibetan consort, and hidden to be discovered in future generations from the 14th century onward. And we have on the right an image of Guru Rinpoche in the form that, as Chatur Rinpoche described, is called Rangrik Gyalpo, which is in the hidden land of Pemaka at the naval center called Rinchen Pung. And this is a larger than life-size image, like Guru Drakpo, but in this particular form, unique to this place. So hidden lands, and if I speak a little bit fast, it's just because I'm going to try to go through a lot of material, can be in many ways sort of conceived of as as more approximate versions of Shambhala, this idea of a hidden Himalayan kingdom that's both on the earth but somehow beyond it at the same time. So this is a wall painting of the sacred land of Shambhala. And Shambhala was also something, of course, that did influence the English writer James Hilton when he wrote his book in 1933 called Lost Horizon, which brought this word Shangri-La into English language and into kind of international concept of a hidden Himalayan kingdom. But the texts that actually describe the hidden lands, as I mentioned, are called Negi, and they are found in libraries across the Himalayas. In this case, this is a monastery in Samagaon in Nubri in northern Nepal, where I was looking for some of these texts years ago. So these slides that I'm showing here are converted over going back, more than 20 years, a series of expeditions that I made at Chatur Rinpoche's request to visit these hidden lands, which are described in the text as lying in hidden and remote parts of the Himalayan range, such as we see here. And they are, as you can see, the Himalayas sort of arching between India and Tibet. And again, another image of Shambhala, this idea that the hidden lands are very difficult to reach behind great ranges of mountains. And many great tertons or treasure revealers over the centuries have sought out these hidden lands in a physical sense, as well as, of course, on the spiritual dimension as well. So one of the hidden lands in Nepal on the border with Tibet is called Kimalung, the hidden land of happiness, and we see the entry Chorten on the left into this hidden land, which you can see from the upper right is very, very much a kind of a pocket in the Himalayas, and apart from the single entry point into it, very much hidden from the rest of the world. This again is a closer image of that entry Chorten into the hidden land of Kimalung and pilgrims who are going there to make offerings. So we see here also another hidden land in Khumbu, actually, in Nepal, which was the Sherpa people, Sherpa meaning people from the east who originally settled there, following prophecies of Padmasambhava to settle into an area where they were said that they would find refuge and prosperity, which of course they did. The hidden land tradition, of course, emerged originally in Tibet, particularly here at Terdrum, the place of treasures, where Padmasambhava and Yeshe Sogyal are said to have spent the longest single period of time together. If we look at the top of the mountain on the left, we're looking up towards the Enlightenment Cave of Yeshe Sogyal, the Kiryangzong Kando Tsokpo, which we'll see closer up views of in a moment. And this is still a very, very active center for Nyingma practice, Nyingma Kagyu practice. Here was a Terton from eastern Bhutan who was there, and there's a very, very active Nakma sort of female practitioners there. Here, one younger one with her teacher Ani Riksang behind. Ani Riksang spent several journeys into Pema Kö and very connected to that place. This is going up with both Ledong Shepe, with this one Terton and Ani Riksang to the Enlightenment Cave of Yeshit Sogyal from Terdrum. As you can see, very, very sort of difficult terrain, but this is actually the cave, Kanjo Sopo Kiryonzon of Yeshit Sogyal, where she attained enlightenment according to the texts practicing Tummo. And this is Ani Riksang, who stayed there in retreat. And so the whole idea of these texts is that they are written in a kind of cryptic twilight language, if you will, a poetic sense, that they're not necessarily things that you can just follow on the surface to find the hidden land, but they have to be decrypted through meditation and contemplation, often over several months or years. But what is also very fascinating about these practices is that they invoke a landscape that itself is transformative. And many of the practices that are said to be done there are ones that deeply engage the natural world and the natural elements, the 5 elements in this case, letting the mind enter into the stream of water, into the sound of water, in order to enter into the natural state. And we see that depicted on a mural painting in the Lukang Temple in Tibet, and also by a practitioner on the right. And this enters into a visionary dimension in which the distinctions between the world as we tend to see it now and the world as it truly is begins to dissolve into a kind of intermediary continuum. But it's not as if the hidden lands were just visionary realms. In this, this converted to PowerPoint, and so it's not as legible as it was, so I'll read it. This is from one of the earliest revealed neiks, revealed by Rigzin Godemchen in 1366, and it translates as the outer passkey to the hidden lands. And it says, those who contemplate journeying to the hidden lands often fall prey to their doubts and lack the requisite courage, while those who are overly pious lack the means to open the way to these secret places. For all who lack the auspicious circumstances to enter the hidden lands, they will remain as imagined paradises. They will not manifest simply through idle talk. So that's sort of a prelude to my idle talk at the moment. But what I want to talk about today particularly is the greatest of all of these hidden lands. There were many, many described across the Himalayan range from Ladakh through Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, into northeastern Arunachal Pradesh. And Pema Kö, which, as you can see here, is at the eastern, the great bend of the Tsangpo River as it bends around the eastern terminus of the Himalayas, and then begins to flow south into India. Pema Kö, literally the land arrayed, or the realm arrayed like lotuses, or Pema Kö can also mean the manifestation and expression of Padmasambhava. They're different kind of outer inner secret and innermost secret explanations given even to the word itself. But given time, we're going to sort of just skip over some of that. This is a map I made of Pema Kö. I made about 13 trips now into the Pema Kö region, which you can see the Tsangpo as it goes between Namche Barawa and Gyalapelri. These are the 2 peaks at the eastern edge of the Himalayas, and forms what the Guinness Book of World Records now recognizes as the world's deepest gorge. In another of Padmasambhava's texts, Liberation Through Hearing of the Great Blissful Land of Pema Kö, he says that just hearing about the great blissful Buddha realm of Pema Kö opens the path to enlightenment. And it's somehow cut off in the PowerPoint conversion we did. It says, but there is not to mention the power of actually going there. A later Terton who went to Pema Kö said, "Aho, the secret land of Pema Kö, pure realm for the Buddhas of past, present, and future. Just thinking of this place, I become joyful. Crystal glaciers adorn the sky, rain falls like nectar from the gods, and rainbows fill the valleys, walled round by snow peaks, sorry, there's a cutoff because of the PowerPoint conversion, and jungle. This hidden land of Padmasambhava is a place where fortunate beings can find enlightenment. But what we see is that this is not just, again, a visionary realm. It's very, very physical. Here we see actually the dark part of the mountain is a spur coming down from Gallipoli, over 26,000 feet. And behind that, the snow wall of Namche Barwa. So and the gorge of the Tsangpo is actually between those two. It's behind that first ridge of mountains, and then comes again snaking around. So an incredibly difficult area to reach, and therefore inspired a lot of these ideas of a hidden realm right off the edge of the Tibetan plateau. The description of Pemaka, according to many of the Neiks, the text describing them, is representing them as as lotuses or the chakras of the body of Dorjee Pamo, Vajravarahi. And the heart chakra here at Kundu Dosempotrang, the citadel of Vajrasattva, is considered to be the core of this hidden land, and represents Tapak, Tamding Dorjee Pamo in union, as well as Vajrasattva in union. And to reach this area, the northernmost part of Pemaka is at this great bend of the Tsangpo after it comes out of this very precipitous gorge. And as you can see here, it's almost a subtropical part of Tibet, and very, very different from anything that one sees normally on the Tibetan plateau. This is the river on the left, or actually on you. Yeah, heading down towards India after it makes this great bend at its northernmost apex. And this is a satellite image showing the great differential between the two peaks that form this great gorge. I apologize for this pixelation. Given time, I'm going to go a little bit faster. Do I have about 10 minutes? Is that going to be okay? There were early attempts, even by British explorers in the early 1920s, here Frank Kingdon Ward and Lord Corder, to try to solve the riddle of a waterfall in this region that they believe would rival Victoria Falls in Africa. I'll get into that story, but which is also described in the text of Padmasambhava as the gateway into Yangsang Pemaka, innermost hidden Pemaka. But as I mentioned, the text describe Pemaka as the body of Dorjee Pamo, Vajravarahi, here in her more customary form, holding a Vajra, but as she's depicted in Pemaka as holding a scorpion in one hand and a frog in the other, or snake, I'm sorry. And here we see in the descriptions, it says Gallipoli, the peak of Gallipoli is the crown chakra of Dorjee Pamo. And if we look up at the top, we can almost see this pig-like snout, sow snout, that echoes the normal depiction of Dorjee Pamo in this very early sculpture that we see on the right. So this is held to be the crown chakra. So the pilgrimage, classically, if you enter into Pemaka, is to actually go through a almost symbolic rebirth process through the body, the terrestrial body, the earthly body of Dorjee Pamo. And it's also said in the text that all women in Pemaka are manifestations of Dorjee Pamo, of their dakinis. And this is the beginning of the river. After it's come, this is Gallipoli on the right. So the pilgrim would be following through, as what you can see are very deep forests. And this is also a very early 11th century depiction of Dorjee Pamo. You can see the sow's head coming out from the right, but it's also, and it's showing this, the energy body in a very, very, very amazing image, I think, because it's actually combines Bön concepts of the subtle body along with Shaivite as well as Buddhist, but depicted on the body of Dorjee Pamo. One could spend a whole talk just talking about that, but we don't have time. But the whole idea is that to realize that within the body of the pilgrim. So Paul Tsolak Trenwa wrote in his Treasury of Discourses and Tantras that all pure realms are the appearance of the interdependent arising of the Vajra body's channels, circulating energy, and vital essence, and the mind's nature free from dualistic clinging. Pure realms do not exist elsewhere. So this is sort of the ultimate view, is that Pemaka, the hidden lands, are actually symbolic, you could say, outer Nirmanakaya manifestations of our own innermost pure lands, which is our own pure being, our own innermost nature. But at the same time, they are deeply physical. Here we see, for example, the same way in which Pemaka presents itself on the ground as you move from south from the Tibetan plateau, ridge after ridge of snow and ice, literally hiding a realm below that very few were able to actually reach. Now, in 1729, when Lelung Shepe Dorjee made a journey to Pemaka at a time of great sort of political strife in central Tibet, he wrote an incredible travelogue. And I'll just read again because it's not so clear. His travelogue, he entitled it "The Delightful True Stories of the Hidden Land of Pemaka." And he said, "There's a constant menace here from poisonous snakes, leeches, flies, clawed and long-snouted animals with fangs, dangerous wild men and vicious savages. One can easily succumb to fever and gout, while blisters, abscesses, ulcers, and sores add to the physical obstacles. Those without courage or those with lingering doubts, too many mental concepts, or who are strongly attached to conventional appearances, or who out of ignorance fall into accepting and rejecting, such people will have difficulty reaching this land and getting through unscathed." So it's sort of a wonderful description, and this is an image here of Dorjee Draksen, the main protector deity of Pemaka, who is often described as riding on what looks here like a kind of Himalayan anaconda. So there also, as the text describe, outer, inner secret and innermost secret, or Yangsang dimensions of hidden lands, and Pemaka in particular. So here, the outer gate, and I'll just go through these again. I'm sorry because of time. I'll take another 10 minutes. This is following Lelung Shepe Dorjee's journey. It was about 20 years ago I made this trip, trying to follow his text into the Tsangpo Gorge. And again, following the prescriptions, if you will, for pilgrimage, here we have to cut a lashing. So that's a stick where you cut a notch for every year of your life. You place it against this rock and you climb up the notch log to listen for the voices and the prophecies of the Dakinis, who will either guide you through unscathed or turn you back. But you can see some of what the terrain was like. You can see the Tsangpo way down at the bottom of the image of the right as we try to enter down into where Lelung Shepe Dorjee had done several hundred years before. And this is the kind of terrain. There was no real path at all, so we had places where there were notched logs across cliffs, sometimes going up grass-covered rocks, as you see here. But again, Lelung Shepe Dorjee was an incredible guide. He, of course, following Guru Rinpoche's prophecies, but in his own way. He is really the key to understanding what pilgrimage can mean into such demanding places. And what he wrote was, when journeying to these sacred places, fear naturally transforms into great splendor, and one remains perfectly at ease. A new spiritual awareness flares up in one's stream of consciousness, a conception for unity of bliss and emptiness. So even in such incredibly difficult circumstances, Shepe Dorjee found that as a place that was liberating. So on our journey, which I'll skip over, we got lost in the wilderness. We had to make bridges across rivers. We finally, again, I'm just going to sort of hurry through this, but finally we're sort of rescued, as it were, because we really didn't know where we were going to come out, by a hunter who took us for 2 days through the jungle, incredible plants, mushrooms, Himalayan pit vipers. Finally came to a village that was on the other side of this great bend of the Tsangpo. We were not able to follow it all the way through, which was the same case as Lelung Shepe Dorjee 200 years earlier. But what we found actually was really like a hidden paradise. You can see here there were Lopa, the local inhabitants, with harvesting wild banana trees, children bathing naked under waterfalls. It was really, really like coming into a lost world. And there were also ancient monasteries there that you can see here where local traditions had remained preserved. And as we sort of headed out from this region, not being able to get into the innermost part of the gorge, you could just see this incredible kind of confluence of nature and humanity in just the way the pet animals that were kept, and etc. So this was our way out. Our journey was, again, out of Pemaka. You have to cross, you come out of a subtropical zone into over snow-covered passes to come back into Tibet proper. the inner gate, so to actually get into the innermost gorge, which is where the text described the door into Yangsang Pemekö, innermost secret Pemekö, Bakatuku Rinpoche, who some of you here may well know, he said, no, the key to the Yangsang Pemekö actually lies at the heart center of Pemekö at this mountain, Kundudor Sempotrong. But I said, Rinpoche, it's in the other direction completely. He said, yes, but that's where the key is, so you have to go there to go back to where the door to Yangsang Pemekö is. So this entailed a incredible expedition, almost 2 months long, crossing over from Po, where Bakatuku Rinpoche is from, over the Dashingla here, Dashingla, into Pemekö, over incredible snow-covered passes, eventually crossing over rivers on these kind of rope cable bridges, over further passes. We were traveling here with Kawatuku from Ryoche in Kham, who was in search of 5 mystical plants that are also described in the Negs of Padmasambhava. And he was having us sort of eat these wild flowers. We never knew whether we would die or become enlightened or get terribly sick. We came to these high altitude marshes, this one called Adratang, shaped like an A, but where you sink into mud up to your knees, and Rinpoche blissfully walking through and eating flowers along the way. We finally came to the mountain. We could see it in the distance when the clouds rose, Kundudor Sempotrong on the far right, surrounded by 8 lakes, the Kagye lakes, so connected, of course, to the 8 Harukas. And then finally here to Kundudor Sempotrong and the Kundulatso, the sacred lake at its base. And this is I can't even read it myself here if it didn't convert. But it's something from the heart center of Pemekö, prophecy of Padmasambhava, about what one will discover there. And this is again where those of pure vision will see Vajrasattva emanating from the rock. That's of course Photoshop, but it says fortunate beings will directly perceive the deities. Others will only hear, and ordinary beings will see only rocks and mist. That was myself. But this is Kawatuku on the right, searching for the key. We then came from the heart center into Rinchen-pung, which is this temple built at the navel of Dorjee Pomo. And what was incredible here, there was we came out of the forest, and this is just to give you a sense of why these hidden lands are so enticing. We came out, no one knew that we were coming, and yet there was this rainbow going right to the door, another one went over, and there was already a yogi with a big copper bowl of chang who came to meet us, and we said, well, how did you know we're coming? He said, oh, the only time a rainbow ever comes to the door is when someone's coming, so we knew there was somebody coming. He looked a little disappointed that it was us and nobody important, but nonetheless, it was just this kind. Many, many stories like that in Pemekö. It's a non-ordinary kind of reality that you enter into if you sort of adopt the mindset that the Neiks are in a way encouraging you to do. So all the hardships have to be embraced completely. So it becomes a sadhana just to move through the difficulties. And here was Rangvik Gyalpo, or this wrathful form of Dorjee, of Padmasambhava, who was the center icon, larger than life, in Rinchen-pung. And here Rinchen-pung, as we were leaving it, as you can see, really in a naval center within the wilderness. And again, crossing over a high pass, out into, now it was about getting into the door to Yangsang-ne. 5 more minutes, is that okay? These are following the old maps. The descriptions, interestingly, the local tradition says that if you follow the trail of the takin, which are these animals unique to the Eastern Himalayas, of course in Bhutan, but also in Pemekö, many of them, they say the takin will guide you into the hidden land. What was fascinating to me, it's a little probably just a fluke, but if you look at a satellite imagery, right where the door to Yangsang Pemekö is meant to be, it looks exactly like an image of a takin from space. So this is from the north again, entering into to Pemekö, to the Great Bend, which we saw earlier. And here you see Namche Barwa in the background, and a spur. This, again, very difficult terrain. There wasn't any kind of bridge. We had this cable across that we had to put kind of a pulley using a notched rhododendron piece of wire, and that's me crossing over to get to the other side of the Tsangpo at that point. We had trying to reach the door. We also had caving ladders and ropes because there was no other way to go. But unfortunately, we went down, but none of the porters, who were carrying all our gear would come with us, so we retreated. And finally, a kind of a chud offering ceremony when we reached the farthest point we could get to reach the door from that direction. So we tried over several more expeditions to find another way in. Long stories, which I can't go into here, but eventually we were told that there was a way, and we said there was a path, but the path consisted, as you can see at the right, of holding on to tufts of grass going down wet cliffs. And when, again, our hunter guides wanted to turn back because we were enveloped in mist, amazingly, this circular rainbows appeared all around us with our images cast upon them. And the local hunter guides, all prostrated and beyu, beyu, and it was just extraordinary. And then after that, the mists cleared, and because of that auspicious meteorological sign, which they said they'd never seen it like this before, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. And so they led us down to where the text described a door behind a waterfall. But many cliffs leading down into it, couldn't reach it, finally had to go down on ropes, and here you can see the description, it's hard to see here, but there's a kind of oval doorway at the base of the gorge, which was described in the text as being the baga of Dorjee Pamo and the entrance into Yangsan Pemaku. There are two doors, one of which is in the north, which we're seeing here, this Yangsan Pemaku behind the waterfall. I could end here. I'm just going to read this. This is a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who wrote an introduction to a book that I wrote about Pemaku. And he says that hidden lands such as Pemaku are not places to escape the world, but to enter it more deeply. The qualities inherent in such sacred places reveal the interconnectedness of all life and deepen awareness of the hidden regions of the mind and spirit. Visiting such places with a good motivation and appropriate merit, the pilgrim can learn to see the world differently from the way it commonly appears. Now, I could end there, but I just quickly wanted to spend 3 minutes just going through Yangsan Pemaku. This is Lower Pemaku, and because I know some of you are connected to this place, this is showing, again, the chakras of Dorjee Pamo going down into the Lower Pemaku, this contested area between Adi, or what we called Abor by the British before. This is a Lama there holding up a decree from the Kanam Depa in Po, basically laying claim to this area for the Tibetans. This is showing this area south of Namche Barwa in what's now Arunachal Pradesh. You have to go up the Siang River, a branch of the Tsangpo, the Brahmaputra, into a very, very tropical region inhabited by Adi and Mishmi tribes. The largest density of Bengal tigers, according to George Schaller, are still in this area of Pemaku, still very, very intact tribal communities, and very amazing medicinal plants also in this area. But as you can see, Mishmi people living very, very much the way they've always lived. And following local traditions here, the Igu Mishmi shamanists on the right, a tradition that was said to have come from eastern Bhutan, a woman veiled going into trance to actually, we asked her to kind of, how do we find the door into Yangsan Ne? Here we see Lama Nawang and Lama Tashi from Bhutan, actually on the left, going to the sacred site of Devi Kota, collecting the red sindoor, which is said to come from the Baga, the womb of Dorjee Pamo. Local yogins and yoginis in this area here are very elderly. I was a direct disciple of Dujum Rinpoche with Amchi Sherab from Bhutan, who I traveled with here. Amazing paintings were there showing various yogic arts, the Trulkor system in this one very remote hermitage. Here, the hermitage and sort of temple of Dorje Tenzing at Tashiding, Tashiyang. Here again, our host and a guide, Mishmi, in his traditional gear, and this is, was our kind of homestay in the area, our base. We were collecting, looking for these 5 magical plants. Obstacles included, Himalayan pit vipers. At the head of the Yangsang Chu Valley, there are 3 sacred peaks set to represent the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Dharmakaya. So Riwatala, Pemashiri, and Chittapuri, and you can see the kind of terrain that involves. The pilgrimage ideally inscribes all three of these peaks at one time. Here's the treasure box on the top of Riwotala that you see at the top of the image there, the sacred lake at Riwotala, now on the way from Riwotala to Pema Shilri, and looking back from Pema Shilri to Riwotala, the sacred lake at Chittapura, they call Danakosa Lake. Amazingly, again, the first morning, a rainbow comes right to where we were staying. These kind of phenomena become commonplace in hidden lands. It's hard to describe. And this whole idea of the Dakinis, these were actually our porters in the area. These were Adi women who insisted on coming with us, and extraordinary, helping to find the hidden plants. So just we'll end with this image of Guru Rinpoche as Dorjee Drolo, from Paul Solak Tremwa in his Treasury of Discourses and Tantras, that when all relative appearances are only the pure and impure deluded appearances of mind, how is it possible to express or to conceive of their existence or their non-existence? Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking us through this fascinating journey through the hidden lands. We wish we had more time because it would have been very, very interesting for all of us, but unfortunately time is a constraint always. You spoke so much about the textual, how the textual and the physical coalesce, as also how the imaginary, the spiritual and the real all come together in what you call as a non-ordinary reality, and that came through very powerfully in your presentation. Thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Wangchuk Dorjee Negi, who will speak about the infinite potential of the mind and the importance of spiritual practice through the story of Guru Padmasambhava. And is it a presentation?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right. Okay. Mr. Wangchuk Negi is actually the professor of Department of Moola Shastra, the Indian Buddhist philosophy in the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Sarnath, and also the Dean of Hetu Evam Adhyatma Vidya faculty, and he has previously been in the Central Institute of Buddhist Studies in Leh, Ladakh. He has 7 books to his credit and several papers, and he'll be speaking to us about the topic that he...
Gyagra penjum bola gadinje pema jungne kula datung me tadalundup simbe kananje urian rumboche la sovand. Respected chairperson of this session, Sudha, Gopalakrishnan, and distinguished scholar on the dais and of the dais, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the organizer for giving such meritorious opportunity to share my view on the Guru Padmasambhava. Before I am going through my presentation, just I would like to say in 2 minutes in Hindi language, जैसे कि हम यहाँ पर एक प्रकार से मानव मनुष्य, लेकिन हम लोगों का अपीयरेंस सबका अलग अलग है. उसी प्रकार हम सभी बोलते हैं, लेकिन बोलने का तरीका हम लोगों का अलग अलग है. क्या उसी प्रकार हम लोगों को सोचने का तरीका अलग अलग नहीं हो सकता? निश्चित रूप से इसी दृष्टि से हमको देखना होगा, विशेषकर जब गुरु पद्मसंभव जो बहुत ही मिस्ट्रियस है, रहस्य में है, उनके संबंध में बोलने पर निश्चित रूप से मतांतर हो सकते हैं. जो मैं यहाँ प्रेजेंट करने जा रहा हूँ, शायद वो आधुनिक लोगों को या हिस्टोरियन लोगों को बहुत ज़्यादा शायद सहमत नहीं हो सकते, लेकिन आप जानते हैं मैं मंक हूँ, तो मैं जो यहाँ बता रहा हूँ वो जो एक प्रकार से परंपरागत दृष्टि से जो हम साधना करते हैं, जो हमारे हिमालयन रीजन में हर 10वें शुक्ल पक्ष को हम साधना करते हैं गुरु पद्मसंभव का, और रात और दिन हम जो गुरु पद्मसंभव के मंत्र को रिसाइट करते हैं, उसमें हम कैसे विचार करते हैं, क्या हो सकती है गुरु पद्म संभव का जो है स्वरूप क्या हो सकता है, इस पर मैंने लिखा है। तो एक दूसरी बात, बौद्धों की दृष्टि से जब हम देखते हैं तो इस सृष्टि का जो ओरिजिन होगा वो जो है एक प्रकार से डार्विन के इवोल्यूशन थ्योरी की तरह नहीं होता है। बुद्धिज्म की दृष्टि से जो दुनिया का ओरिजिन, सृष्टि का निर्माण जो है होमोजीनियस हो सकता है, सजातीय हो सकता है, हेट्रोजीनियस नहीं होगा। कभी भी जड़ से चेतन की उत्पत्ति नहीं हो सकती है, ना ही चेतना से जड़ की उत्पत्ति हो सकती है। जड़ और चेतन का अपना स्वतंत्र अस्तित्व है। जब हम व्यक्ति कहते हैं तो निश्चित रूप से हमारा व्यक्तित्व जो है जड़ और चेतन दो चीजों से बना है। जहाँ मैटर है वहीं कॉन्शियसनेस भी है। मैटर और कॉन्शियसनेस जो है एक प्रकार से फायर और उसका हीट की तरह अभिन्न है, या जैसे एक प्रकार से फूल का गंध और फूल की तरह अभिन्न रूप से। यदि आप इस स्थिति को नहीं समझेंगे तो मैं समझता हूँ फिर हम गुरु पद्मसंभव की वास्तविकता को नहीं समझ सकते हैं। वैसे भी जब हम दर्शन की बात करते हैं तो ऐसा है जैसे कि हम सब जानते हैं, एक स्टोरी है ना, एलिफेंट और 5-6 ब्लाइंड लोगों का, जो ये ब्लाइंड लोगों में किसी ने उसके पूंछ को, ट्रेल को छुआ, किसी ने उसके पैर को छुआ, किसी ने उसके बेली को छुआ और इंटरप्रेट करने लगे दीवार जैसा है, रस्सी जैसा है या खंबा जैसा है। वो आंशिक रूप से सब सही है और आंशिक रूप से असत्य भी है। ठीक उसी प्रकार की जो आधुनिक सोच होगा या परंपरागत सोच होगा, मैं ये नहीं कहता पूर्ण रूप से सत्य है, लेकिन उसमें सत्य का अंश दोनों में है। कैसे हमको जो है समन्वय रूप में बिठाना है उस पर विचार करना होगा। इसी सोच के साथ मैं नाउ आई एम गोइंग टू प्रेजेंट माय पेपर। आई वांट टू गो थ्रू माय पेपर later on. If we have time, definitely I would like to be discussed on my paper anyhow. Tathagat, the Buddha mentioned of the three inconceivable power. Number one, inconceivable power of atom, inconceivable power of karma, cause and result, and the third, inconceivable potentiality of the mind. In the 21st century, we are aware of the power of atom. For example, atomic bomb, supersonic jet, internet, and so on. Regarding the karmic relation, with the help of the modern science, we can see the wonders of the universe, existence of the various and diverse creatures living on the earth and in the sea. Thus, we can understand the inconceivable power of karmic cause and result. But today, human beings are forgetting the power of the mind, even though mind is the very agent that cause all the other potentiality and the various action. The modern science is not aware of it. Therefore, it is a need of time and very much stable time to discuss on the great practitioners and accomplished Master Guru Padmasambhava, as I feel. A person is not simply the aggregate of the atom or the form, not only the biological or physical stuffs, but of course their consciousness is also there, which is the dominant factor of the person. Unless we realize the existence and the infinite potentiality of the mind, our life cannot be experienced genuine happiness. The entire Buddhist literature talk about the nature of the mind and the various techniques of the discipline it. Therefore, the Buddha's teachings are known as the shasan, the meaning, the taming, discipline. Among these teachings, Shravaka on hieroglyphs, Pratimoksha Samvara, the vow of the self-liberation, Bodhisattva vehicles or Paramita vehicles, considered the compassion, etc., much more important than the Pratimoksha Samvara or the elimination of attachment, hatred, and so on. We find many sutras in which sometime for the benefit of the many others, even some action that are prohibited, otherwise are allowed if it is purely for the benefit of the many others. Vajrayana is the secret and esoteric vehicle which can be known from the following saying of the Nagpada Sekupdeshtika, I quote, Gridhar Kute यथा शास्ता प्रज्ञा पारमिता नहीं तथा मंत्र नहीं प्रोक्त श्री दान धर्म देशना. This means while the Buddha was teaching the Pranjaparamita at the Gritarkut Rajgiri, the Buddha also appeared out of his wisdom body or Jnanakaya in the form of Kalachakra deities and gave teaching on the Tantra to Suchandra, the king of Shambhala in Ambanavati in the same time, simultaneous way. So this is the secrecy. Without accepting such kind of thing, quite difficult to explain the life story of the Guru Padmasambhava. Same Acharya Shakya Mitra, 7th century, great tantric master, he said, while the Buddha was practicing harsh condition at the bank of Naranjana, 6 years, when he was doing regress training or regress practice, Shakya Singha says that same time when he was practicing Naranjana, same time his wisdom body was teaching Yoga Tantra in the Akanishka Bhuvan, Akanishka realm. The person who is understand his or her own mind, Tathagata Garb or the Buddhahood, he or she is able to understand the fact that the Buddha can perform many activities at a time. Buddhahood can be acquired from the Buddhahood cannot be acquired from the outside. It is achieved only through the self-realization. This can be understood when we anyway, the synonym of the Vajrayana is understood. So what is Vajrayana is? It is said in it is said by Abhay Vajra, Vajrena Shunyata Pravokta, Satven Jnana Matrata, Tat Atam Mano Siddham Vajra Sato Swabhavata. The inseparable nature of emptiness and the wisdom is called Vajra. And Vajrayana is the method or the path of visualize that very nature. As it is said, follow in the Guha Samaj Tantra. It says that Kaya Vaka Chit Vajrayana Bhed Abhed Swabhavata. According to Vajrayana tradition, body is not separate than mind, mind is not separate than speech, speech is not separate than mind. Means body, speech and minds are the manifestation of our primordial mind. We cannot make separate body and mind in individual way. Body, speech and mind are inseparable. So without knowing this reality, I don't think we can able to understand what is Vajrayana is, or what is the form of Guru Rinpoche is, how it is possible to appear in the different area in same time like. If we have understanding of these things, then only we are able to understand the reality of the, I think, Guru Padmasambhava. The body itself is speech. The speech itself is the mind. The mind itself is the body and speech. The oneness is the path of Vajrayana. It is also called resultant vehicle or Phalyana, because the resultant body, activity, etc. are contemplate on the very path to it. From this is clear that Tantra is utmost great, and it is not subject of the common people. Unless we understood the secrecy of the Tantra, we cannot do proper justice on the life and activity of the Padmasambhava. It is like I explained, 4 seasons to the short-lived creatures. How can survive even 1 season? So how can it is possible to understand the 4th season, who is lives only 1 season, if asked to he or he. So in that way, I think without, what I want to emphasize is, without knowing the subtle wind energy and mind's unseparateness, so without knowing the primordial nature of our existence, there is no way to explain about the Guru Rinpoche. Anyhow, mysterious elements are found from the Theravada to Mantrayana. For example, it is said in the Atanati Sutra, that Shakyamuni Buddha goes to the Traitlangshik God realm to teach her mother. That is very sacred. How it is possible to human being to go to the Traitlangshik? But it is explained in the Atanati Sutra in Theravada tradition. And even in Paramita, Asanga goes to the Tushita Haiwan and receives teaching from the Maitreya. Tilopa goes to the Tushita Haiwan and receives teaching from the Vajradhar, the great Tibetan translator. Marpa met the wisdom body of the Nadapath after the passing away of the Nadapath. Similarly, even though Acharya Chandrakirti born 600 years later to the Nagarjuna, but he met with Nagarjuna wisdom body and blessed him, and he composed Pradyoktan commentary on the Guhya Samaj Tantra. These mysteries events are not acceptable for the modern historian, but the great Acharya, an accomplished teacher of both India and Tibet, who devoted their whole life to spirituality, accepted these mysterious facts unanimously. Therefore, we cannot deny the mysterious event with our limited intellect. For example, even in terms of development of the science, we know that from the balloon in the beginning, today we all are enjoying the supersonic jet. Likewise, there are great power of minds in terms of the secret practice of the Vajrayana that we cannot deny. Likewise, the miraculous activity of Guru Rinpoche are also vast and profound. Generally, 4 ways of the birth are accepted in Buddhism. Buddhism, in Abhidhamma course, it says that Chadurda Nar Tiryak Panchyo Naraka Upatuka Antrabhav Devasya Pret Abhi Charayuj. According to Buddhism, we divide this universe into 6 migrants. Among 6 migrants, God realm, demigod realm, human realm, and Tiryak, animal realm, and the hell realm. In God realm, demigod realm, hungry ghost realm, and hell realms, beings are born by mysterious way, upaduka, mysterious way. Only, even in human being, we believe that there are 4 types of birth. Human being and animal beings are, in animal being can birth 4 types. There is andaj, eggs also, worm also, and heat and moisture also, and miraculous also. So Guru Rinpoche was born as a miraculous way. This is my assumption, what I want to try to say. Guru Rinpoche's birth was miraculous, not the womb, as historian people try to explain. There are all 4 types of birth in the human beings and animals. The commentary of the Abhidhamma course can be consulted for the detailed elaboration on it. As said, according to the Guru Padmasambhava birth, it says in Namasangati, Buddha Padma Udbhava Shrimam Sarvakya Jnana Kosha Drik. And same time, it says in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, Buddha himself says, I achieved the Mahaparinirvana to dispel the position of eternalism. To dispel the position of nihilism, I will take the birth as a prince on the flower of the Dhanakosha pound. Thus, the birth of Padmasambhava on the lotus flower and his beneficial activities are mentioned in the Sutra and Tantra. The great Tibetan historian Paul Tsuklakthengwa also said, to tame the non-human beings, Padmasambhava took the birth on the lotus and benefited in numerous beings. Therefore, the life and activity of Padmasambhava cannot be arranged in order. Same thing, it says by Sakya Pandita in Trisambar Vibhanga, the king invited Padmasambhava to his country, Tibet. He kept all the 12 evil spirits of the Tibet in his custody. Therefore, the dissemination of the non-Buddhist position is not possible here. Thus, all the great accomplished master of the Tibet bow down to him with the respect. Describing Guru Rinpoche's personality, Upadhyaya Shantirakshi says, I have put all the non-Buddhists in Buddha teaching with my knowledge. I am well versed in all the sutra and paramita texts, and I practice bodhicitta, but I cannot control the non-human being of Tibet. To tame them, Guru Acharya Padmasambhava, the Odyan, must be invited because he is the person who has achieved the accomplishment of longevity and the status of Vidyadhara. He is able to control all God, devils, and restrict them to protect and disseminate Chandadama. The Uddiyana Shantarakshita requested the Emperor Trishuldesan. From this, it is clear that Padmasambhava was an accomplished tantric practitioner and had control over the lifespan. Dipankar Shrijan had a vision of goddess Tara, and because of her inspiration, he became a monk rather than become a king. He was the chancellor of the Vikramshil Mahavihara University. Before he went to Tibet, he was a bodhisattva endowed with a clairvoyance power. He also said that Padmasambhava equivalent to the Sagin Vajradhar, and thanks to him, many scriptures were collected in the Samya monastery from Dhakas and Dhakinis, which were not available even in India. This is said by Dipankar Shrijana. Today, Vajrayana Buddhism and its philosophy are separating from over Himalayan region to every corner of the world, and all credit goes to the Padmasambhava. Regarding this, many prophecies and biographies are found in the Sutra, Tantra, and hidden teaching. Here it is not possible. Okay. Anyhow, my paper is with you. I have already handed down to my paper. Maybe if someone wishes to read it, maybe in your hand, because of the time, not allowing me to go, means complete to my paper. Anyhow, means I try to explain about, of course, his 8 manifestation. This is only possible when you are able to agree to accept him as Upadukparth, then only it is possible to explain the 8 manifestation of Guru Padmasambhava. Otherwise, quite difficult. Same, I try to explain the Guru Rinpoche's disciple, 25 disciple, his legacy in my paper, and then Guru Padmasambhava holy places in the Himalayan region, where it was, I try to explain that, and same time I try to meaning the mantra of Om Ahum Bhadra Guru Pema Siddhi, what are the meaning of actually Om Ahum Bhadra Guru Pema Siddhi Hum. So I'm not going through the paper because of the time. Anyhow, lastly only, last I want to just, otherwise, okay, I don't think to read. I think it is good to be give time to the audience.
So continuing on the theme of texts and commentaries, thank you so much for giving such a lucid explanation of what is it about. You also drew on several texts also in the process, and also drew attention on that we have to have a comprehensive understanding of reality from different sides, and also how the body, speech, and mind are in harmony with each other, and only then spiritual realization happens. Thank you so much. We have one more paper. We have paper of by Sri Lobzang Tsewang on the 9 Yanas concept of Padmasambhava, in which he is talking about how Lord Buddha had given differential teaching in spiritual practice, one through spiritual practice and the other through knowledge, sutra, tantra, the 2 kinds, the modes of teaching, and how according to the different capacities these were given to students, and how a student has to go, a trainee has to go through a rigorous mode of practice through the 9 yanas. This is what he's going to be talking about. Professor Negi is a professor actually in the, I'm sorry. He's a professor in the comparative philosophy at the Central Institute of Buddhist Studies in Leh, and he's taught for 35 years. He's also the chief editor of EHBC and has a master's in arts and philosophy from Punjab University. He also has written the book called Selfness of Person in Tibetan, the Madhyamika's Conception of Truth and Error, with a special reference to Acharya Song Kapa, and also another one on Shakyamuni. Over to you.
Thank you. Respected Chairperson, scholar on the dais, Reverend monks, scholars, member of the organizer committee, ladies and gentlemen. I have nothing to say. I will read my paper slowly. Will you understand about this non-Yanas? What is that? I divided my papers in many subtopics, but I skipped some topics because all the mention already has gone. Okay. Mind and conception of Padmasambhava. Buddhism is one of the most famous religions in the world. It is very easy to put into practice even today's age of science and technology. Buddha was the founder of this popular principle. It is very scientific rather than mere speculation. It has no space for dogmatic theories because essential theme of the teaching goes hand in hand with the empirical fact. Whatever concept found in the Buddha's sermon that can be investigated and proved on the basis of the logical reasoning. I skip. He taught two types of the system, with Sutra and Tantra, in accordance with the listeners who are endowed with the different interests, aptitude, and caliber. Both of the system emphasizes on the compassion, and the wisdom of the emptiness must be cultivated necessarily, because these are the antidote to the two abyss emotion, self-cherishing attitude and self-grasping. These two evil emotions, the major obstruction to develop the firm and true body of the Buddha, should be eradicated. In Tantra, he delineated such a method which is the shortest and quickest path to the enlightenment, can be developed between the short span of the human life. Here he advised that the aspiration should develop a meditation which focuses on the vein, canal, and drops. Through this, the practice, one can properly dissolve his or her ghost consciousness, and as a result, primordial or the subtle consciousness rises up from the indestructible drop. After the training make this subtlest mind to realize emptiness of inherent existence. This wisdom is the direct antidote to the subtlest imprint of the affliction. Such a wisdom is recognized as Ati Yoga or ultimate clear light, which alone is the right approach to the perfect enlightenment. Different ways taught in other adhyanas are subsidiary to the graded step to the Ati Yoga absorption. Then I skip. About the birth of the Padmasambhava, we have the controversy about this, the place and how he was born, etc. It seems, I'm sorry. Yeah. It is traditionally accepted that the Padmasambhava was born from lotus flower rather than from human. in the land of the Uddiyana. His birth seems as a miraculous event. He was born as a human baby without human father and mother. In a way, Jesus Christ was born without human father. It is difficult to claim that it is superstitiously based on the blind faith, although this sort of event goes against the biological laws. But it may not be impossible. If we analyze how the first living beings come into existence on this earth, then we scrutinize the evolutionary theory, which also violates the causal law. It is possible. That means it was born from the lotus. Then I skip. Yeah. It seems that wherever Padmasambhava sojourned, he adopted the spiritual consort. As a matter of fact, it is an essential factor for real tantric practitioner to create heat energy in his body so that the drop which lies in the crown would be melt. This melting drop flows down through the central canal to the heart chakra, and then practitioner attains the extreme bliss, whose nature is innermost subtlest consciousness. It is such an inseparable entity of bliss and emptiness. By practicing this real method, even an ordinary person can transform the himself or herself into Buddha. I skip. He specifically taught Tantra, Padmasambhava. He means Padmasambhava. Specifically taught Tantra, conferred the initiation, instruction to qualified disciples, 25 disciples, including king and queen of the Tibet, attained the enlightenment within their lifetime. In this way, he contributed the propagation of the sacred mantra system in Tibet and surrounding areas. Okay, my topic is 9 Yanas. Padmasambhava came into contact with the suitable candidates in Tibet and compassionately introduced the system to them so that they may take the full advantage from its practice. In due course, its practice extensively flourished throughout Tibet and its adjacent regions. The practice of this system has ceaselessly been surviving among the people in the East. Now it is also extended to the Western world. So we have to be aware of its nature, significance, technique, how to put it into practice. I will try to illustrate them, which are 3 Sutrayana, 3 outer Tantra, 3 inner Tantra, etc. 3, then now. Sutrayana, what does mean Sutrayana? In Sutra, content of the teaching pertain to the Four Noble Truths, how sentient beings revolve in the samsara and search out for its cause and condition. Is there really any hope to escape from suffering? What is the way, how to put into practice? This system is illustrated somewhat in the 3 swinging wheel of the Dharma. Some practitioners utilize this method to free oneself from samsara. These are named either as Sharvaka or Pratyak Buddha. Some trainees put this method on how to release other beings by aiding practice of the bodhicitta. The way of the sutra is comparatively dull and slow, which takes the countless lifetime to attain. enlightenment. Sutra consists of the three systems, Sharvaka, Pratyek Buddha, and Bodhisattva. Sharvaka. These systems mainly pertain to the two noble path, i.e. method and wisdom. The method refers to the attitude of the renunciation, which is a strong intention to flee from the samsara. It is well known that as long as one lives in the samsara, there is no chance to enjoy the genuine happiness and pleasure rather than the facing the threefold suffering. The wisdom is the realization of the root cause of the suffering, i.e. self-grasping and its antidote. So far, one has the misconception of I, affliction and karma, out of which the springs of the suffering, which follows continually further and does not stop. Therefore, the unified practice of the method and wisdom is essential to attain the liberation from the samsara. The state of liberation is the permanent, so nobody would be relieved from there. Pratyek Buddha. In this system, the practice of the method is no different from the Sharvaka. So both of them develop the attitude of the renunciation. However, here, wisdom of the non-duality of the subject and object is to be practiced. Here, the so-called object is the mere illusion and has no substantial entity of its own apart from the subject. Both of them cannot be separated from the substantial point of view because they both of them arise from the same predisposition which preserve in the stored consciousness. The flower of the small vehicle stick to the self-cherishing attitude and are not able to sacrifice themselves for the sake of and well-being of the earth. Of course, they cultivate love and compassion, but for limited beings rather than for all sentient beings. They intend to achieve liberation from samsara for themselves, unlike the Bodhisattva. In this sense, they are very selfish and take steps in wrong direction. Bodhisattva. The practice, the bodhicitta and wisdom of the emptiness is attained highest enlightenment for the sake of all other sentient beings. On observing disturbed condition of the sentient beings in the samsara with ceaseless suffering, in spite of the having of the will to achieve the happiness, the Bodhisattva developed the attitude of the cherishing other by killing their own selfish desire. They forget themselves, constantly involved in serving others. They devote themselves to work on others, how to remove difficulties of the other, and how to fulfill their requirement. They make the effort on how to create a peaceful atmosphere where they can live with contentment. In short, the Bodhisattva live only for the sake of and well-being of the other. Mind conceives the thing as it exists inherently, which is the defiled of obscuration and the main hindrance to the highest enlightened. It can only be abolished when the wisdom of the emptiness is being practiced constantly with the support of the bodhicitta. This is the way of the Bodhisattva to perfect enlightenment, Tantra. The system of Tantra is differentiated on the basis of the technique, how to practice the path. There is no such method in Sutra developed a similar firm body of the Buddha, where the successive paths are being progressed. In Tantra, illusory body of the Buddha is materialized through the involve oneself into the meditation on the wind and canal and drop. Moreover, the instruction of the Tantra is that the trainee should perceive and then conceive the surrounding environment as a celestial mandala and divine rather than the ordinary place. In the similar fashion, he or she should cultivate an appearance of deity as well as the pride of the being a deity. He and she appearance and she should forget being an ordinary person. In this practice, the ordinary appearance and the concept are regarded as a major impediment and should be dispelled through the developing with the appearance and the strong pride of the divinity. One who is interested in the practice the tantric path at first receive the initiation of one of the idam of the chosen deity by entering into the mandala from the qualified Vajra master. The practitioner must commit certain pledges and vows which the prerequisite for the successful spiritual journey and has to strictly observe the without falling into transgression. Tantra is very complex system. It is very difficult to put into practice because the crucial attempt must be made to transform. It is very difficult to transform sexual attachment from which the sexual attachment into the spiritual path which lead to the enlightenment. There are the various ways from which the sexual attachment may arise by seeing, through smiling, through embracing and having intercourse with the consort. That consort may be visualized the one real one. Maybe it might be who might be either real or the visualized one. Through this attachment, the complex of climax of the sexual bliss arises and then utilizes it into realized emptiness. Through such a repeated practice, this sexual bliss would be transformed into the non-duality of the clarity and wisdom of the emptiness. That is the explanation of the Tantra. It is very difficult when we can't practice hardly. Then outer Tantra, there is three kinds of outer Tantra. Outer Tantra. The system of the Tantra is split into two divisions, outer and inner. Outer Tantra mostly gives the stress on the external activity rather than the inner one. In this stage, the real sexual bliss cannot be transformed into the spiritual path, which is generated from the sexual intercourse. The trainee generates the light sexual bliss by coming into contact with the visualized consort and then strive to transform it into the spiritual path. In addition, the mantra recitation, ritual ceremonies, yoga meditation, and other practices are to be performed. The yoga meditation with and without sign is the mainly practiced. It means the yoga practice of the non-dual clarity and profundity is performed. It does not have the practice of the generation and completion state as done in the higher yoga tantra. Action tantra. In action tantra, is it very difficult? Please. Madam, please give me time to read. Performance Tantra here, the trainee practices the yoga meditation, and in this process, he visualizes the deity and then assumes to have the mutual smiling with sexual intention. This action induces the sexual bliss in the mind, and then he or she converted it into the spiritual path, which led to the state of the perfection. All the remaining practices are similar to the action tantra, yoga tantra. The training of the yoga tantra has developed the several higher stages with respect to the yoga meditation. He or she visualizes the deity as it being a spouse and assume to embrace each other with sexual desire. In such a state, the intensive experience of the sexual bliss arises. and then utilize it as a means to attain the Buddhahood. Rest of the practices are similar to the other lower Tantra, inner Tantra. This system is also divided into three, i.e. the Maha, Anu or Ati Yoga. It is considered that in all the inner Tantra, the stages of the generation, completion and a great perfection are being practiced. But the differentiation among them is made on the basis of the putting emphasis on the view, meditation, and begetting swift result. In inner Tantra or highest Yoga Tantra, there is the specific stage. The sexual bliss as a state of the orgasm is essential, which is rise from the intercourse. Here, the practitioner develops a spiritual capacity to transform this bliss into the path to achieve the perfect enlightenment. Perfect enlightenment, okay. Mahayoga, I skip it. Okay, madam, I skip it. Ati Yoga. As a precondition, in order to manifest the basic mind or the primordial consciousness, the trainee must abide by the tremendous retreat for a long time, gain the teachings and a blessing from the qualified master, and accumulate the unfathomable merit. As a result, the basic mind manifests into the one whose nature is luminosity and emptiness. That is the primordial consciousness. Luminosity and emptiness. By focusing the mind of this subject, one concentratedly meditate and then achieve the highest enlightenment. Then material body dissolve into the light or the rainbow body. It is very difficult to say, make distinction between the Shankaras, the Atma, and Ati Yogas is the primordial consciousness. Both say that it has no cause. It is the inborn quality said like that. If we deeply scrutinize, analyze, it is very difficult, seems to be very difficult to differentiate between them. Might be distinction, otherwise might be distinction. Anybody can make it, please comment it. Conclusion. The nine-yana system is a concise excerpt of Sutra and Tantra taught by the Lord Buddha. These are successive steps toward the enlightenment by which the spiritual progress is gradually met. Attitude of the renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom of the emptiness are commonly practiced in the both systems, Sutra and Tantra. Whereas in the practice of the Tantra, yoga meditation must be added, through which the firm body of the Buddha is developed. Since Tantra is known as the quickest way to enlightenment, it is called the resultant vehicle. Certainly the affliction, the bitter imprint, can only be eliminated by the practice of the Ati Yoga or Dzogchen, because the basic mind or the subtlest consciousness become the direct antidote to the subtlest affliction and its imprint. The combination practice of the both of them is necessary, because mere one of them would not be capable to lead the state of the perfection. Due to above illustration resigning the system of the Tantra in general, Ati Yoga or Dzogchen in particular is being more popular in the East as well as West. Thank you.
Thank you for an edited version, but yet rich in detail on the process of meditation, on controlling the mind and controlling the breath, and through it, controlling the spirit in that sense. It is a very, very codified kind of a presentation in which the 9 yanas were explained in terms of the 3 systems of sutra, the 3 inner yana, the 3 outer yanas, and also they explained the process of how a spiritual, a trainee gets into the spiritual mode and how it leads finally to the experience of nirvana. So to that extent, it was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Now, I don't know whether we have too much of time. The time is already up. I wonder if we can take about 2-3 questions, and then perhaps that's how we will wind it up.
Some over there.
Yes. If you could please identify yourself and then.
Identify, that is a very difficult question. And that was the that difficult question was raised by Menander, and that is for Milinda Prashna. What is that? That is so that identification is very, very difficult. That is ये परिचय is it is सहज वो चिरंतन is परिचय is very easy, परिचय is very difficult. So for my submission, after the appreciation for these 3 very, very learned, very, very illuminated presentation, I am very thankful to the great scholars and the sadhaks. But my submission is that for masses, we are not here for classes only, for masses, and for particularly for intellectuals. What texts, 3 or 4 texts that can be applied for yoga and tantra, so that the misconception about yoga and tantra be dispelled. To my perception, I was thinking that there is a link between Panini, Patanjali and Katyayan. It is a tradition. So, is it by reading Yoga Vasistha or Vivek Chudamani, or by reading the Yoga Sutra or Patanjali, or by reading the Vishuddhi Magga? So, or by, is there any text in Vajrayana system that may be very helpful for the masses, for the initial practice of it? Those who are very, very interested. So, like Gandhi only read very, very intensively, only 84 texts, and then he started applying. So that for this, in this fast world, if we can have the assimilation of only 4 or 5 texts, so that
thank you.
we can. So, so what are the suggestions of these learned scholars? That is my submission. Thank you very much.
So, to whom your question?
Anybody could take the question if you would like to.
Generally, when you talk about yoga, of course, according to the background of the different people and different religion, different philosophy, I think there is varieties are there. Yoga generally means joining. Joining to what? Those who believe in the Creator. To them, yoga is to imbibe with oneness with God. That is yoga. Pray with the devotion to make oneness with the God. That is yoga for them. To Buddhism, yoga. For of course, they are a variety in Buddhism. Theravada tradition, they have their own yoga. Mahayana has their own yoga. Vajrayana has our own. But similarities to relate yourself with the reality, actually that is yoga for Theravada. your body is arising and ceasing each and every moment. The contemplation of that, becoming oneness with that nature is, of course, yoga, right? And then you go to the Mahayana. What is yoga? To think all sentient beings as you are like a mother. Since beginningless time you are born in the cyclic existence. Therefore, each and every being is like your mother. So you need to think of the depth of those beings, to be kind, to generate the compassion. That is yoga for the Mahayana tradition. To generate the illustrated mind. That is yoga. In Vajrayana tradition, again, as I mentioned before, being the primordial nature, all sentient beings are divine. There is nothing distinction between male and female, animal and gender and decent. All are divine. Treat all sentient beings as divine. Practice that way. That is yoga, actually. There is no such one, thing like this and that kind of. But one more. If you want to practice Theravada, just you contemplate on the Eighth Noble Path. That is Theravada Yoga. If you wish to practice Mahayana tradition, just practice Bodhicharya Avatara, go through the Bodhicharya Avatara of Shantidev or Ratanamala of the Nagarjuna. If you want to practice Vajrayana, just study the Buddha Samaj Tantra. That is yoga for.
Any other question, please?
Again to Venerable Wangchuk, Negi. Can you kindly slightly explain more on Upaduka manifestations and these emanations with regard to Padmasambhava? Slightly, can you elaborate, please?
As I mentioned before, according to Buddhism, there are 4 types of birth we believe in. 4 types of birth, right? 4 types of birth. One is from egg. Second is from heat and moisture. Third is womb. And fourth is miraculous way. Like God realm. All God realm, God and Goddess are born by miraculous way. Spontaneous way. There we don't need like womb, parents kind of, neither parents nor we need heat or moisture or egg, and it's come like a spontaneous way through our own action. Like a hale beings, they born miraculous way, spontaneous way by its own. Through of course there is backside of the condition is karma. Karma of the beings, karma of the oneself, Like, it says that if you visualize Buddha with great devotion, Buddha will appear in front of you. Buddha is exist. His primordial mind is exist. As science says, energy never be exhaust. Thus, existence of energy is always there. Energy never be immediate. Same way, according to Buddhism, not only the energy, subtle energy, but consciousness is also there. Which is inseparable with the energy and subtle, is there, exists always there, right? So if you do practice, if you have great devotion, to maybe Guru Rinpoche and Shakyamuni Buddha will appear in front of you. Even it says that today also, great master direct see to the Guru Rinpoche and they receive teaching from the Guru Rinpoche in sometime in dream like that way. So I think again, maybe if you think of like this way, according to Buddhism, we treat that there are 4 types of body. One is our gross body, which depend on the water and food and so on. And another body is like a latency body, dream body, right? And third body is like an intermediate body, right? And fourth body is Sattva's Vajra body. What is Vajra body is? Actually, Vajra body is that Sattva's energy and consciousness. One is the Sattva's body, which I say primordial body, primordial mind. That if we are contemplate on that, if we are able to realize that reality, then I think we are able to dialogue with the Buddha and Bodhisattva and so on. This is like this way, if you want to produce the electric gods, you need to find out what is the element of the electricity. So once you find out the nature or element of electricity, then only you are able to produce the electric gods. Likewise, You know, if you want to, dialogue with the Buddha and the Bodhisattva, and if you want to go to the Pure Land, you need to, realize your primordial nature, like electricity. If you are able to do that, I think Guru in front of that is actually like a Upaduk birth.
Thank you so much. I think because we have overshot the time, I think we have to close this panel. And thank you so much for all the panelists, and it was a very, very illuminating discussion. Thank you so much.